Hello, and welcome to the presentation, Beyond Transfer Credit, Credit for Prior Learning Foundations. My name is Allegra Fowler, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Prior Learning Recognition at Purdue University Global. Today, we're going to walk through a few topics related to credit for prior learning, transfer credit, and this whole space of learning recognition. We'll start with a brief introduction, dive into a little bit of data about the value that prior learning has been measured to have. Then we'll focus on a case study of how we address prior learning at Purdue University Global, and then we'll end with a little bit of a call to action. So here's the bad news. In 2017, the U.S. Government Accountability Office published a report indicating that the average student loses about 43% of their credits when they're transferring between institutions. And that really does not set students up for success. Losing that much credit inhibits students' ability to achieve their academic goals quickly and efficiently. But here at PG, we've got some good news. Every year, we award about 1 million credits to students for their prior learning, including a transfer credit, military experience, and other potential sources of incoming learning. We'll get into the details of that just a little bit later. Before we dive into this material, I want to take a moment to acknowledge some of the various definitions and ideas that you'll hear me using terms in this space that I don't know if we've really well defined them as an industry, but I'm going to throw a few definitions out just for the purposes of illustrating how we conceive of these areas at Purdue University Global. So we use the term prior learning as a bit of an umbrella term to include all learning that's happening outside of our home institution. So all learning that's not happening at Purdue University Global, we consider that to be prior learning. That includes transfer credit, that includes military experience, that includes less traditional forms of learning. All of those are under the umbrella. The most relevant spot for this conference is really that transfer credit space. And we would consider that to be prior learning that's coming from another accredited institution. And it inherently exists as credit because it has been authorized by that institution with a number of credits, a grade, an academic area, and kind of a focused code that tells us exactly what the student is learning at that school. Transfer credit. In addition to transfer credit, though, prior learning includes some other spaces. So prior learning assessment, we use to describe the evaluation method used to convert, non-sponsored prior learning into credit. And we also use that acronym PLA to represent the learning that happened, the learning that required that assessment to convert it into credit. And for us, PLA really excludes transfer credit. This is the hallmark of non-traditional credit. It's something that there needed to be an after effect assessment to determine that learning should yield college credit. Another term we use is credit for prior learning. And this is one that I've heard emphasized more recently in the industry of wanting to call things credit for prior learning. And we use that term to describe prior learning that is available already as credit. So credit for prior learning, the emphasis is really on that credit and that someone has come in, either the American Council on Education or a faculty team has come in and said, this prior learning, though it is not transfer credit, it is credit worthy and should help the student to achieve their academic goals. So you'll hear me using these terms throughout the presentation, but I just wanted to draw a little bit of a definition to help follow the bouncing ball as we move through the presentation. So next, I want to talk a little bit about prior learning and the value that it creates. Because this is the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students, our focal point is really on the transfer experience and as a result, the transfer of credits. So those are those college credits that are moving between institutions. But I would argue that our ability to acknowledge, transfer, and absorb less traditional credits is something that warrants a good conversation at our institutions, focus and exploration that operates in parallel to the movement of traditional transfer credits. And here's some of the evidence as to why I believe that this is a really important challenge for higher education to rise to. There's been a lot of research recently around prior learning, and here are a few key takeaways. College students who have had most of their credits transferred are 2.5 times more likely to graduate. So this is drawing a direct parallel between student success and recognition of prior learning. When students are given the opportunity to gain the advantage that prior learning offers them, they're going to stick with it. They're going to see the finish line. They're going to make it. They're more likely to make it to graduation. We also can compare in the second statistic the completion rate for adult students who had credit for prior learning versus those without. So students who have prior learning, who have received credit for prior learning, complete at higher rates. These are really valuable students to have in your population. And they will, at least as far as the data is concerned, they are more likely to do better in their programs. They're more likely to complete. Here at Purdue Global, we did some analysis similar to these where we looked at the term 2 persistence of our incoming student population. We looked at this last year and we actually found that specifically students who had transfer credit, they persisted to term 2 at a 76% rate, whereas those without transfer credit persisted at a 52% rate. So it's a little bit difficult to untangle whether we really have a causation here, but we certainly have a correlation between recognition of prior learning and students sticking with it and making it to graduation. This top statistic is probably my favorite one in terms of myth busting some of the past perceptions of what PLA, credit for prior learning, or transfer credit might do at the receiving institution. I think there's always been an undertone that by giving students more transfer credit, more PLA, more credit for prior learning, we are then displacing credits that the student would have otherwise completed at our institution. So from a financial modeling perspective, there's an argument that could be entertained that the more credit you give away, the less courses a student is going to take at your institution. And so, that student is then somehow less valuable. But the research actually shows quite the opposite. Adult students who earned PLA at their institution ended up taking measurably more credits at that institution than students who did not receive PLA. And so that's really a valuable insight into the behaviors that credit for prior learning is connected to in terms of what a student is going to take at the institution they land at. They're going to end up taking more credits because they're going to persist, because they're going to stay, and because they're going to reach graduation. So busting that myth that students who get credit, it's just displacing what they would have taken at your school, they are likely to take more credits at your institution if you give them the acknowledgement of the learning that they already have when they got there. Guild Education, working in the higher education industry, asserts that even just one credit of prior learning can offer that psychological support. It gives students motivation to persist, stick around, and complete their program. So in summary, why does credit for prior learning make such a difference? The 4 dimensions that I would call attention to would be time. Transfer students in general are looking for efficiency and good options to achieve their degree goals. It's often a reason why they went to maybe a local community college in the first place, because they wanted to be intentional and efficient in their academic pursuits. So, excuse me, receipt of credit for prior learning moves the finish line closer, so the time to achieve graduation can be reduced for the students who are taking advantage of those opportunities. Further, receipt of credit for prior learning saves students money. If a student can use an open course from an open course provider, or they can pursue an experiential learning portfolio to receive credit for what they learned through on-the-job training, those events typically cost far less than the standard tuition of a course. And so students can save themselves some money by pursuing credit for prior learning. I also want to highlight the motivational aspect of receipt of credit for prior learning. The event of turning to a student, particularly an adult student, particularly a transfer student, and saying, you know what, you learned a lot before you got here, and we want to give you credit. We want to acknowledge it. We want to celebrate that success. We want to position you for future success. We have found to be something that really does motivate students towards sticking around and reaching their degree. So we can use it as a tool to support our students and really enable that academic success. The final component I would add here is simply the behavior. And this is the one that's a little bit tied up more in terms of what's flipping what switches and what's moving what levers. There is a connection between behaviors here. Prior learning students persist at better rates, they're more likely to graduate, and they're better prepared for their classes. It's not really certain whether we can replicate those behaviors by encouraging students to pursue credit for prior learning, or whether it's just the effect that students who are already motivated are going to go seek those credit for prior learning opportunities. It's really difficult to unpack that. But regardless, we do have a match. We have an overlap between those behaviors of a credit for prior learning recognition student and a student who's more likely to graduate at the institution. So receiving these credits beyond just transfer credit, but the other forms of learning really does make a difference for students. So here at Purdue University Global, we have a Center for Prior Learning Recognition, where our focus is ensuring that every student who arrives at our university earns credit for what they already know. If a student has already mastered the outcomes, the objectives of a course that they're required to take here at PG, we want to find a way to help them gain recognition for that learning that they've essentially already mastered. How do we do that? So this is a solutions map of the categories that we operate in to ensure that we are recognizing all of the sources of prior learning that a student brings to the university. So starting on the left, we're kind of in the most traditional space. So we have prior college, which would be the transfer credit. A student going to that local community college, transferring to university, and expecting that the courses that they completed at one institution of higher education will move with them when they come to another institution of higher education. And I think that's very table stakes. If we're at this conference and we're attending to this spot in higher education, we should really be thinking about how to optimize and maximize the opportunities for students to transfer those credits. But it goes farther than that. So the next category I'll call your attention to is the standard exam. So this is, for us, this is CLEPs, this is APs, this is Dante's DSSTs, Cambridge International Baccalaureate, and some of those examinations that a student would take that really, are really well recognized as being matched to college level learning. We try to stay tuned to this space. I mentioned Cambridge International. That's a newer opportunity for exam credit at our institution, but we undertake these research projects to determine, what's going on at a particular organization, what are the outcomes and objectives that we're aligned to, and we've found that these standard exams position students very well for success in their further courses at Global. So we give credit for those standard exams. Moving to the next lane here, military credit. So at Purdue University Global, about 30% of our student population is military or military affiliated, including spouses and dependents. And we're very proud of that, but I think we might be equally proud of the credit opportunities that we put on the table for former service members and active service members looking to make a move towards achieving an academic goal in higher education. We rely heavily on the recommendations from the American Council on Education, ACE. If you are not familiar with their work, I would highly encourage you to go do a quick Google search for the ACE Military Guide, and you can start looking at the work that they do to prepare college credit recommendations for various military trainings, courses, and experiences. We rely on those recommendations from the ACE in order to prepare credit package opportunities for incoming service members. And we're in kind of a constant state of cycling for more spaces, more courses, more experiences that we can give service members credit for when they're coming to Purdue Global. We think that the training that students receive in the military is different, but it is well matched to the rigor and the intensity of a college level course. So where those ACE faculty teams have made a recommendation that something is college credit worthy, we honor those recommendations and we do our best to utilize them in application to a Purdue Global degree plan. Similarly, in the open course space, so this would be your Straighterline, your Sophia, your study.com, onlinedegree.com, and what's Sailor Academy. Those are a couple of the organizations that have been reviewed by the American Council on Education for their open courses, and where the ACE has made a recommendation that an open course is equivalent to college credit. We again honor those recommendations, and those courses become a really nimble tool that students can use. For example, if they have some subject mastery in a particular course, but they need to brush up on the topic, maybe they encountered that academic subject a long time ago. These low-cost, self-paced open courses can be a really good tool for getting students well positioned to re-enter education and pursue that degree. Moving to the next lane, we're getting a little bit more into what we describe as kind of alternative credits, credits for things that might be a little bit less common for an institution to make credit available for. Job training. So this is another space that ACE occupies very well in terms of having reviewed some professional training programs. Where a professional training program has appropriate structure, appropriate rigor, and appropriate assessment, we can take a faculty team and we can have the faculty team review that professional training program in order to determine whether there's any college credit contained therein. And the way that this really benefits students when we're able to do this work proactively is that it prepares an opportunity for credit that the student doesn't really need to do anything in order to access. So when a faculty team reviews a professional job training program, they're creating a credit opportunity that would be available to any student who completed that training program. So rather than having the student have to do the work of describing and documenting their learning, we're simply popping the hood on the training program that they completed and indicating that anyone who completed this training program and they passed it successfully, they can receive credits for having done so. Similarly, in the licensure and certification space, this is very common for us in the information technology field. Professional certifications are a common currency of learning in terms of job acquisition. So we are turning our focus towards determining what the underlying college credits should be for various professional certifications. So if the student has a CompTIA or the student has a CISSP, what does that mean in terms of their program here at Purdue Global? Again, we can leverage the expertise of our faculty to take a look at those professional certifications, take a look at the number of hours required to achieve the certification, and then we can make a series of recommendations for courses that the student should receive credit for if they've attained that certification. This is proactive in the same way that that job training review I described operates, so that the student needs only then provide us with evidence of their certification in order to gain access to the credit. The student really doesn't have to do very much. It keeps most of the work in that space of being proactive and student agnostic in terms of our review of the credentials. But that can only be done so much and so far. We cannot review every job training program that a student might have completed. We certainly can't review every licensure or certification standard that a student might attain. And so that's where we move to the right side of this map, which is in the space where we will have to capture the learning from the individual student in order to determine what credit they should receive. So on the top, you'll see a test out option. And the test out option is a challenge exam test out. We call it an assessment of skills and knowledge, ASK. It's an ask here at Purdue Global. And a student can use an ask in order to say, you know what, you're telling me I've got to take accounting 1, but I've been working in bookkeeping for 20 years and I really feel like I already know what I'm doing there. instead of taking the complete course, the student can jump right to the final assessments and the student can essentially test out of that class. But that is individual work and individual attention for the student. That can't be done with a broad brush. We need to know what that student has learned and whether they are qualified to pass through that class. And then in the bottom right, we have our experiential learning portfolio, which I think is probably our most robust, but also most resource intensive opportunity for students to gain credit for their prior learning. Through the experiential learning portfolio, the individual student is going to complete an educational journey where they document all of the learning that they've achieved, the sources of the learning, the artifacts and documentation. We've built this program around the Council for Adult and Experiential Learning CALE standards for evaluation of non-sponsored learning. Through the portfolio program at Purdue Global, we actually require the student to take a course with us that will teach them how to do this portfolio creation. We found that in the past, before we had that, students didn't really know how to pursue this work. When I started in the registrar's office 15 years ago, students were mailing in 3-ring binders of just certifications and letters of recommendation and all sorts of things without a whole lot of rhyme or reason. And so we have changed this process pretty significantly so that the student takes a class, they learn how to compose the portfolio, and we have an electronic system where they'll do all of this work in a pretty well-structured way. And so our students are typically very successful in this portfolio, receiving, I think our average is about 30 quarter credits for a portfolio in terms of student outcomes at the end of the day. And it's a great way, again, to tailor the capture of prior learning to that individual learner experience, where we don't have any proactive opportunities on the shelf when they get here. A portfolio might be a good option for us to make sure that they're getting credit for what they know. In addition to the solutions map and the different processes and inputs, we also have a few other features that I would call your attention to if you're thinking about expanding your access to credit for prior learning and transfer. One is we have at Purdue Global designed our degree plans themselves to be fundamentally transfer receptive and flexible. This includes being really conscientious about electives versus individual course requirements, ensuring that there is space for those electives to happen on the degree plan. We have some degree plans that are designed to be a 3+1 almost naturally within the structure of the program. And doing transfer credit work in a program that is extremely structured and has very little wiggle room, you can beat that up all day and you're really not going to be able to make too much advancement. We have found that taking the mindset of being transfer receptive all the way up the stream to the moment of program creation is really the best way to ensure that at the end of the day, you're going to have ways to help students gain recognition for that credit and ways to actually use it towards achieving their academic goals. Here at Purdue Global, we also have a program we call the Advanced Start option, which is a policy that enables students who are coming from a completed 2-year associate's degree to get a shortened version of the major requirements in their bachelor's program with us. So if the student has an associate's degree, we execute a series of course adjustments and waivers to accelerate their progress towards degree completion with the bachelor's. We are an HLC accredited institution. We allow up to 75% of the program to be fulfilled by transfer credit at the undergraduate level and 50% at the graduate level. And additionally, one of my passions in the work that we do is ensuring that we're kind of walking the walk and talking the talk on something being eligible for transfer credit or eligible for prior learning credit. We want to make sure that those credits are actually helping the student achieve their degree goal and not just credits that are floating around that are eligible but underutilized. We're really focusing in our department on utility of credit so that it is advancing the student towards completion of the bachelor's degree. On the college transfer credit side specifically, We use college source tests in order to manage consistency in our credit evaluations. We have over 300,000 courses that we've reviewed and stored in that database. We grow that every day. It helps us to optimize those evaluations. We also develop custom credit pathways to show, from a particular transfer partner, if you completed that associate's degree, if you come over to Purdue Global, here's what's going to happen in your bachelor's degree. We try to make all of that as black and white and as scalable as we can. With our partner institutions, we occasionally formalize an articulation agreement where we're actually pinning down specifically our commitment for a credit to move in a particular way between two program options. Typically, those articulation agreements, we're really trying to do something special and something more than just the standard transfer credit that would happen if a student came from one program to another without the agreement in place. On the kind of far side of the chart that we explored in terms of our solutions map, we also work hard to ensure that military learning, industry certifications, and corporate training programs are getting a fair shake. We always lead with faculty, we lead with the American Council on Education, and we want to make sure that those incoming learners are really getting an opportunity to demonstrate what they've learned and use it to help them achieve their degree goals. So we've only got a few moments left here. So call to action, what can we do here? So I would say that at an institution level, folks need to recognize and advocate for the influence that credit for prior learning can have on student success. The enrollment cliff came and went, enrollments are down, institutions are struggling. One of the ways to navigate part of these challenges is to ensure that students are sticking around, ensure that your students are persisting, retaining, and achieving graduation, and ensuring that they have an accurate and complete credit for prior learning record is one of the ways that you can enable and influence that success. Transfer centers in general, I think, should be focused on increasing the opportunities for credit. Work with faculty, work with the deans, listen to your students. What is it that they have learned outside of higher education? What is it that they know before they got to your institution? And you can use those individual student experiences as a catalyst to engage further conversation about creating proactive opportunities for students to receive credit for a particular learning objective. And then what can you do? As individuals, I think it's about becoming an advocate and raising awareness whenever you can. Whatever conversations you're a part of, whatever individuals you are collaborating with, ensure that they know the value that transfer and credit for prior learning has for students. It helps the individual student achieve their academic goals. It helps them persist, retain, and make it to graduation. I would also encourage everyone to continue to research the opportunities, build those connections, as I said, with faculty, staff, and deans, convey the value of changes that you can make. As an example of a change here at Purdue University Global, in 2022, we changed our practices to explore allowing non-traditional credits to transfer. So up until that point, we accepted your A, your B, your C from a community college or an outside institution, but we didn't accept anyone else's non-traditional credits, experiential credit, etc. And so we partnered with Ivy Tech Community College in 2022 to explore and pursue a change to this policy. And we worked between our institutions, and effective in March of 2022, we started accepting Ivy Tech's V grade, verified competency grade, as eligible for transfer directly to Purdue Global. Because once a student has documented and prepared this credit for prior learning, we felt like it was pretty fair for us to acknowledge the work that Ivy Tech had done and let those credits flow to Purdue Global where they were able to. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that this case study in credit for prior learning provokes thought for you. If you have any questions or are interested in any follow-ups, my email is here on the screen. Additionally, I will be in person at the NISTS conference, so you can look around the hallways and find me there. I'll also be spending some time at the virtual conference, which may have already happened when you're watching this. I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.